The palace of Zithera stood like a jewel carved out of light. Its tall towers were built from living crystal that shimmered in soft colors, pulsing gently as if the building itself had a heartbeat. Alien courtiers moved through the halls like drifting waves of color. Their skin caught the glow of the crystals, turning every face into a shifting painting. At the heart of it all sat Princess Liara. She wore her crown lightly, though its weight pressed against her shoulders every day. Her people depended on her, not only for leadership but also for hope. Years of war with the human confederacy had drained both sides. Now peace talks were underway, fragile, uncertain, and watched by 100 suspicious eyes. Liara carried herself with calm grace, but inside her heart remained scarred. Once she had shared her soul with another. Kale, her bondmate, had been more than a partner. He had been part of her very being. In Zitheran tradition, such a bond was sacred and eternal, a joining of lives that went beyond flesh. When Kale fell in battle years ago, something within her had died too. Since then, her days had been filled with duty but never joy. Today was no different, until the moment the doors of the throne chamber opened. A squad of human guards marched in, armored and alert, assigned to protect the diplomats during negotiations. Most of the courtiers barely looked at them. To the Zitherans, humans were hardy but inelegant, lacking the luminous beauty their own kind carried naturally. Yet to Liara, time itself seemed to stop when she saw the one at the front. The young human moved with disciplined steps, scanning the room with sharp eyes. His uniform was simple compared to the glowing robes of the courtiers, yet there was strength in his bearing. But none of that mattered to Liara. What struck her like a lightning bolt was his face. He looked exactly like Kale, the same angular jaw, the same storm-gray eyes, even the same scar that curved along the corner of his mouth, a scar she remembered tracing with her hand long ago. For a moment, her breath caught in her throat. She felt her heart stumble, then race wildly. Her vision blurred, and the chamber around her faded away. It was impossible. Kale was gone. She had mourned him, buried the pain deep, and sworn never to open it again. Yet here, standing before her, was a human soldier who carried his face. The courtiers noticed her reaction. Whispered voices rippled through the chamber like wind stirring a calm sea. Some gasped softly, others exchanged quick glances. Among the Zitherans, bondmates were believed to be unique. No one else could share such a likeness. For a human to carry Kale's face was unthinkable. Liara forced herself to remain composed. She straightened in her throne, her voice calm but firm as she addressed the delegation. Yet every time her gaze returned to the human guard, her chest tightened. His name, she soon learned, was Captain Darius Venn. Darius himself had no idea what was happening. He had been briefed on his assignment, to guard the human envoys during the talks and to show discipline in the alien court. Nothing more. He did not expect the alien princess, radiant, strange, and intimidating, to look at him as though she had seen a ghost. Her gaze unsettled him. Wherever he moved, he felt her eyes follow him, sharp and searching. When the meeting ended, Darius retreated with his squad, but the feeling lingered. It was not the first time others had reacted strangely to his face. On his homeworld, people sometimes remarked that he carried an old-world look, as though he belonged to another age. But never had he seen such raw shock, such grief in another's eyes. Liara could not rest that night. The image of Darius haunted her mind. She walked the crystal corridors of the palace, her hand trailing across the walls that pulsed faintly with her touch. Memories of Kale returned unbidden, his laughter, his voice, the warmth of his hand in hers. She remembered the day he fell, remembered the emptiness that followed. But now in the face of this human, she had felt something stir. It was faint but real. The bond, the impossible spark that once tied her to Kale had flickered, as though reaching across time and death. She summoned her advisors. They must explain this, one elder said sharply. No human could carry such a likeness unless they meddled with forbidden sciences. Cloning, perhaps, a trick to weaken your resolve. Another advisor shook his head. Or it is fate. The humans are reckless, yes, but they endure things even we cannot. Perhaps destiny has touched them. The court split in whispers and arguments. Some urged caution. Others demanded the humans' immediate removal. Liara listened, but her mind was elsewhere. At last she spoke. "Bring Captain Darius to me. Alone." When Darius entered her private chamber, the air grew tense. He stood tall, his soldier's training keeping his expression steady, though inside he was uneasy. Liara studied him in silence for a long time, her luminous eyes unblinking. "You look like him," she said at last, her voice soft but sharp. "Like who, Your Highness?" Darius asked carefully. "My mate, my Kale." Her words were heavy, each syllable carved from grief. Darius frowned slightly. "I don't know who that is. I've never been here before. Never seen your people until this mission." Liara's hand trembled. She reached out almost against her will and touched his arm. A shock passed through her. Not physical, but something deeper. A pulse in the soul. Her breath caught again. Darius stiffened, but he did not pull away. He too felt something he could not explain. A strange familiarity, as though her touch reached into a part of him long forgotten. "What are you?" Liara whispered. "A man," Darius answered simply. Nothing more. But in her heart, Liara knew it was not so simple. Rumors spread quickly through the palace. Word of the human guard who looked like the princess's lost mate reached every corner. Some called it a miracle, others a curse. The peace talks, already fragile, trembled under the weight of suspicion. Rival factions stirred. One lord whispered that the humans had planned this, that they had sent a double to sway the princess. Another claimed it was a sign that the two races were meant to be bound together. The chamber buzzed with schemes and doubts, each voice louder than the last. Liara struggled to keep control. Duty demanded she remain focused on the treaty, yet her heart pulled her toward the human who should not exist. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kale's face in Darius's. Every time she heard his voice, she felt echoes of memories that belonged to another life. The truth had to be uncovered. She made her decision. "Captain Darius will stay under my watch," she declared to her court, "until I learn what this means." The courtiers erupted in protest and whispers, but Liara's word was final. The human would remain. And as Darius bowed before her, confused yet unshaken, Liara felt the strange spark once more. The bond, fragile, flickering, but alive. It was impossible, yet it was real. That night, standing on her balcony beneath the glowing moons of Zithera, Liara whispered into the quiet air, "If fate has brought you back to me, Kale, then why in the body of a human?" Darius, resting in his quarters across the palace, lay awake with the same question burning in his mind. Why did the alien princess look at him with such sorrow? And why did her touch feel like something he had always known? The answers lay ahead, and both of them sensed that peace between their worlds would depend on it. The palace felt heavy with tension in the days that followed. Word had spread across Zithera like fire through dry grass. The human guard who looked like Princess Liara's lost mate was living inside the royal quarters. Some courtiers whispered that he was a trick sent by the humans to manipulate her heart. Others murmured that he was a sign from the stars, a soul reborn in a new form. Captain Darius Venn felt the weight of every stare. Wherever he walked, eyes followed him, suspicious or curious. He had fought in many battles, but this felt different. A battlefield was clear. Enemies on one side, allies on the other. Here, he could not tell which face belonged to a friend and which to an enemy. The only person who looked at him without disguise was Princess Liara. She called him to her chamber many times. Each meeting was filled with silence, questions, and searching looks. She asked about his childhood, his dreams, the battles he had fought. He answered honestly, though often confused by her questions. He did not understand why she studied him, as though trying to read the truth written on his skin. One night she asked him quietly, "Do you dream of places you have never seen?" Darius hesitated. "Sometimes," he admitted. "I dream of cities that shine like crystal, and of skies with 2 moons. I thought they were only dreams." Liara's breath caught. That was her world, her home. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "When I touch your hand, do you feel it? The spark?" He looked at her, uncertain. "Yes, but I don't know why." Neither of them had answers. But both felt the truth. There was something tying them together, something beyond logic. The coup. While they searched for meaning, enemies moved in secret. Not all Zitherans wanted peace with humanity. A faction of lords believed war brought strength and glory. To them, Liara's strange connection with the human was proof of betrayal. If the princess trusted a human more than her own people, she could not be allowed to rule. On the third night after Darius's arrival, the palace shook with alarms. Shadows swept through the crystal halls as rebels struck. Explosions shattered the glowing walls and armed warriors poured into the royal quarters. Liara woke to the sound of battle. Her guards rushed to defend her, but the rebels fought with deadly precision. In the chaos, she saw Darius burst into her chamber, sword in one hand, blaster in the other. His uniform was torn, his face streaked with blood, but his eyes burned with resolve. "Stay behind me," he shouted. She wanted to protest. She was not weak and she could fight. But when she saw him throw himself into the enemy's path, something inside her froze. He fought with a raw, brutal strength unlike any Scytheran. Where her people relied on technology and precision, Darius relied on instinct and endurance. Even when wounded, he pressed forward, refusing to fall. Liara realized then what made humans different. They were not the strongest or the most advanced, but they endured. They survived when others would have surrendered. A rebel blade cut across Darius's side and he stumbled. Liara cried out, running to his side. For a moment, she felt as though Kale had fallen again before her eyes. But Darius gritted his teeth, forced himself back to his feet, and pushed the attackers back with a roar that shook the chamber. With the help of loyal guards, the last of the rebels were defeated. But Darius collapsed to his knees, blood soaking his armor. The revelation Liara knelt beside him, her hands glowing faintly with healing light. "Stay with me, Darius," she whispered. His vision blurred, but he managed a faint smile. "You're crying. Didn't think I'd ever see a princess cry for a soldier." She shook her head, pressing her hand to his wound. "You are not just a soldier. You are something more. I can feel it." Around them, survivors of the court gathered, watching in silence. They saw their princess hold a dying human as though he was her very heart. They saw the glow of her healing light flicker and then strengthen, as if guided by something beyond her own will. And then it happened. As her hand rested on his chest, she felt the bond ignite, the same bond she once shared with Kyle. But it was not a memory. It was real, alive, and tied to Darius. She gasped, tears streaming down her face. "This is impossible," one elder whispered. "The bond cannot be formed twice, yet they all felt it." The truth was undeniable. The sacred connection, once thought unbreakable, now linked a Scytheran princess to a human soldier. Darius opened his eyes again, strength flickering back into his body. What just happened?" Liara smiled through her tears. "Fate has chosen. My people will not understand it, but I do. You are my bondmate now." He stared at her, shocked, but deep inside he felt it too. The strange warmth that had haunted him since they met now burned clearly. Like a fire he could not deny. A new path, the attempted coup failed, but the palace was shaken. The rebels had revealed their hatred, and many feared that peace was doomed. Yet when Liara stood before her people the next morning, she did not speak of fear. She stood tall with Darius at her side, his wounds bandaged but his spirit unbroken. "My people," she declared, her voice carrying through the crystal halls. "You saw what happened. You saw the bond spark again, not with one of our kind, but with a human. This is not a trick. This is destiny. The stars themselves have bound our fates together." The court murmured in awe and confusion. Some still doubted, but none could deny the glow that surrounded the pair. A faint shimmer of energy that only true bondmates carried. Liara continued, her voice steady. "For too long we believed ourselves alone in this gift. But perhaps the universe has shown us a greater truth, that bonds can cross not only life and death, but even species. Humanity is not our enemy. They are part of our future." She turned to Darius and he bowed his head humbly, though his heart pounded with disbelief. He had never imagined himself more than a soldier. Now he was standing as a living bridge between two worlds. The human answer, over the weeks that followed, the treaty was not only signed but strengthened. Where once mistrust had ruled, now hope flickered. The story of the bond spread across both civilizations. Many scoffed, but many more believed. For the first time, humans and Scytherans looked at each other not as strangers but as partners chosen by fate. Darius remained by Liara's side. At times he still questioned it. Why him out of all humans? But Liara answered simply, "Because you endured. Where others would fall, you rise again. That is what makes you human. That is what makes you mine." One evening, as they walked together beneath the twin moons, Darius finally spoke the thought that had burned within him since the night of the coup. Do you think your Kale and I are the same? He asked. Liara looked at him, her eyes soft. No, Kale is gone. You are not his shadow. You are Darius, and yet, my heart tells me you were always meant to find me. Perhaps the stars gave me Kale once, and when he was taken, they gave me you. Not to replace him, but to remind me that love, like destiny, cannot be broken. Darius was silent, then nodded. For the first time in years, he felt whole. Resolution, the galaxy had changed. A fragile treaty had become an unshakable alliance. And at the heart of it stood a human soldier and an alien princess, bound not by politics or force, but by something deeper, a truth that neither species could deny. Humans had always been underestimated. They were seen as crude, simple, stubborn. But now they were something more, proof that even fate itself could bend around them. And as Liara and Darius stood hand in hand, watching the stars, the court, and the people whispered a new truth across the empire. Humans do not only survive, they change destiny.